The day I stopped overthinking didn't begin with courage, or clarity, or confidence. It began with exhaustion. A quiet, heavy exhaustion that lived behind my eyes and inside my chest. I remember sitting alone, surrounded by noise that wasn't really there. My phone was silent, the room was still, yet my mind was louder than ever. Thoughts chasing thoughts, questions without answers, memories arguing with fears, futures fighting with regrets, and in that moment, I realized something painful. I wasn't tired of life. I was tired of my mind. For years, I believed thinking more would save me. I believed analyzing every decision would protect me from mistakes. I believed replaying the past would somehow fix it. I believed worrying about tomorrow would prepare me for it. But instead, overthinking quietly stole my peace. It stole my sleep. It stole my joy. And slowly, it began stealing my belief in myself. Every morning started the same way. Before my feet touched the ground, my mind was already running marathons. What if I fail? What if they judge me? What if I'm not enough? What if I make the wrong choice? What if I waste my life? These thoughts didn't shout. They whispered. Soft enough to sound logical. Loud enough to control everything. I smiled in front of people, but inside, I was constantly negotiating with my own thoughts. I would replay conversations from years ago, wondering what I should have said differently. I would imagine futures that hadn't happened, fearing outcomes that didn't exist. My body was present, but my mind was trapped in a place that never rested. Overthinking doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives like a habit. Slowly, comfortably. It pretends to be intelligence. It disguises itself as responsibility. It tells you, if you think enough, you'll be safe. But what it really does is keep you frozen. You stop trusting your instincts. You stop listening to your heart. You start living inside scenarios instead of reality. There was a day when I realized I hadn't truly lived in a long time. I had only been preparing to live. Waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting to feel confident. Waiting to stop being afraid. And that waiting was costing me my life. I remember asking myself a simple question that changed everything. When was the last time you felt peaceful? Not happy. Not excited. Just peaceful. I couldn't answer. And that silence scared me more than any fear ever had. That night, I sat alone and allowed the noise to rise. I didn't distract myself. I didn't scroll. I didn't run. I listened. And for the first time, I noticed how cruel my inner voice had become. How it doubted everything I did. How it criticized every step. How it constantly compared me to others. I realized I had been living with a voice that never rested and never forgave. And then something strange happened. I got tired of fighting it. Truly tired. Not angry. Not dramatic. Just done. I whispered to myself, what if I don't need to solve everything tonight? That single thought felt like opening a window in a suffocating room. I didn't try to stop thinking. I simply stopped following every thought. I let them pass like clouds instead of chasing them like storms. And for a few seconds, there was space. Just a little. But it was enough to breathe. That's when I understood something powerful. Thoughts are not commands. They are not truths. They are not prophecies. They are just visitors. And I had been giving them permanent residence. Overthinking had convinced me that my value depended on perfection. That my future depended on control. That mistakes were disasters. But in that quiet moment, I realized life had always moved forward even when I didn't have answers. My heart had kept beating. My breath had kept flowing. Somehow, I had survived every version of myself that once thought it couldn't. The day I stopped overthinking wasn't the day my problems disappeared. It was the day I stopped letting my mind bully me into believing I was powerless. I began noticing how much energy I wasted on imaginary suffering. Pain that hadn't happened. Rejections that hadn't come. Failures that existed only in my head. I was grieving futures that were never real. Fighting battles that were never scheduled. Carrying weights that were never mine. And slowly, gently, I started choosing presence over prediction. I began with small moments. Feeling my breath instead of analyzing it. Listening to sounds instead of judging them. Walking without planning the next 10 years. Eating without guilt. Resting without apology. And in those simple moments, something healed quietly. Overthinking had made me believe peace was complicated. But peace was simple. It was available the moment I stopped arguing with the present. There's a strange freedom that comes when you accept that you don't need to have everything figured out. That life is not a puzzle to solve but an experience to live. That clarity doesn't come from pressure, but from patience. I realized my mind wasn't my enemy. It was just scared. It wanted control because it wanted safety. And once I understood that, I stopped attacking myself for thinking too much. I started showing compassion instead. I spoke to myself differently. Softer. Kinder. Like I would speak to someone I loved. It's okay to not know yet. It's okay to rest. It's okay to try and fail. It's okay to take your time. These words didn't change my life overnight. But they changed how I lived inside my life. Overthinking had shrunk my world. It kept me in my head while life waited outside. When I finally stepped out, even for a moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: lightness. I noticed how the sky didn't demand answers. How time kept moving without anxiety. How my breath returned again and again without effort. Life wasn't rushing me, I was rushing myself. And then came the most important realization of all: you don't need to empty your mind by force. You just need to stop believing every thought deserves your attention. Some thoughts are just noise. Some are echoes of fear. Some are old wounds asking to be healed. Not all of them need action. Not all of them need answers. When you stop overthinking, you don't lose control. You gain trust. Trust in your ability to handle whatever comes. Trust in your resilience. Trust in your inner wisdom. That day, I didn't become fearless. I became freer. Free from the need to predict everything. Free from the pressure to be perfect. Free from the idea that my worth depends on outcomes. I started living one moment at a time. Not because I mastered mindfulness, but because I was tired of suffering unnecessarily. And something beautiful happened. The quieter my mind became, the louder my intuition grew. The less I analyzed, the more I understood. The less I forced, the more life flowed. Overthinking had promised safety but delivered anxiety. Letting go promised uncertainty but delivered peace. I still think. I still plan. I still worry sometimes. But now, I know when to stop. I know when to breathe. I know when to say, this thought doesn't deserve my energy. Because life doesn't ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be present. And maybe that's the real secret no one tells you. You don't find peace by fixing yourself. You find it by accepting yourself as you are, in this moment, without conditions. The day I stopped overthinking wasn't dramatic. There were no fireworks. No sudden transformation. Just a quiet decision to stop fighting my own mind. And in that quiet decision, everything slowly began to change. If you're listening to this right now, and your mind feels heavy, restless, tired, know this. You're not broken. You're not weak. You're just human in a world that never taught you how to rest your thoughts. You don't need to control your mind tonight. You don't need to solve your whole life. You don't need all the answers. Just breathe. Just be here. Just let this moment be enough. Because the moment you stop overthinking, is the moment you start living. If you want, I can now. Checkmark right section.